Welcome back to another exciting episode of Guru Talk. I'm Dave Palumbo, and today I'm joined by a good friend of mine. He's been on the show before. He's back again. We're going to be talking about a very controversial topic, the death of Doug Brignoli and what could have caused it. And joining me today is Jay Campbell. Welcome.
What's up, Dave? How are you, brother?
Say welcome back. So
great to see you, man. Thank you for the opportunity, as always.
Your shows are always very popular because they're very polarizing. Because people either totally agree with you or they think you're nuts. So I like that because I like that you have very strong opinions.
Awesome, man. Yeah, like I said, I'm grateful, always humbled and privileged with the opportunity to speak with you. I see it as a total honor to speak to the community.
Thank you.
Because I believe you have the hardest core, but also the most knowledgeable, people. Like you said, it's polarizing. You have people that are like really on this side and very on that side. So we try to bring it to the middle.
Absolutely. And with science, not with outlandish, theories and stuff like that, obviously. By the way, how's the hair product doing? I'm still using it, by the way.
Yeah, I mean, it's great. I mean, you can see I've completely regrown my hair.
I've grown a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, you too. I mean, it's like we said, right? Like age is always going to be the ultimate, denominator when it comes to losing hair. Is your hair going to thin over time? Of course, if you have a genetic predisposition and you live a shitty lifestyle, then you're going to be bald. But with our our technology or product, and by the way, as I told you, phase 1 is in the works. We should have it in first quarter of next year. We should have had it earlier.
Yeah, what's that? Are they going to combine the two products together?
Yeah, so it'll be a liposomal delivery system, which means that the oil-based of C60, of carbon-60, will actually be in a liposomal capsule. So it'll be one formulation. It'll probably be like a J. Paul Mitchell, just plump it into your scalp before you go to bed at night, and you won't have to put 2 squirts and stuff. But yeah, I mean, I've regrown my hair. Dave, just to answer that question, because a lot of people, still get no results and say you're a scammer and blah, blah, blah. But we've figured out that about 72% of all of our users, from the math, from the people that have responded to all of our surveys, actually get great results. Right. There's about 10 to 15% of people that we feel like are like me and you and live low inflammation, but they just don't get results. And that's usually due to genetics. It can be due to just, their environment. There's a million factors. But then the rest of the people that don't get results is what you and I already said. Like if you're living, an inflammatory lifestyle, you have high body fat, high visceral body fat, blah, 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 then you're just not going to get the results.
Right. Look, like I said, I'll take anything. So even 10% better is better than getting nothing from it.
Right.
So
and ultimately, to the listening audience, it doesn't cause any kind of health side effects, right? All the big pharma meds, over time can cause all sorts of sexual dysfunction, inflammatory response signaling. There's all sorts of stuff that happens. So with ours, all you're doing is increasing blood flow to the scalp naturally.
I'll tell you what I did notice. My scalp is very healthy.
Yes, 100%.
The skin is good. I don't get any dandruff ever.
No dandruff. No,
I don't even break out on my scalp. So I used to get like ingrown hairs and little once in a while. And I thought putting that oil on it would make it worse, but it actually made it better. So yeah,
and remember, the oil is a molecular sponge, right? Carbon-60 is pulling those nutrients in. So you take the GHKCU, which is the angiogenic, increase the red blood cells, and it's automatically going to condition your scalp so that it's very healthy. Right.
Where can people pick up your hair product?
ASearCustom.com, and of course use Dave's code. What is your code? Is it huge or is it?
I think it's is it RX Muscle? I don't even know.
I don't know. I'll find it out before the end of the show.
Terrible preparation. I wasn't even because I wanted to ask you because I still use it.
I think it's huge 15. I think it's huge 15.
Huge 285. Oh, huge 15 maybe. Yeah. What I do is I will say one thing for people who are using it. I put a towel on my pillow at night. Because otherwise you'll get an oil spot on your pillowcase.
Well, for you and me, that's for sure true. But if you're like a person with longer hair, especially for women, they don't, and I'm glad you said that. You got to massage it into the scalp. Don't just spray it into the hair and let it sit in the hair, put it into the scalp and rub it into the scalp.
I do that, but sometimes I do it right before I go to sleep.
Yeah, no, for you guys like you and me with thin hair, it's going to get in your pillow or mattress case for sure.
Yeah. All right. Having said that, I want to talk about Doug Brignoli because I like Doug a lot. I know you met him before. Super smart guy, very analytical.
Total genius.
Loved bodybuilding. Probably never really he probably didn't make enough money from the amount of time he put into bodybuilding, but he did it because he loved it. It was like a love of the game type of thing with him. A lot of people are speculating, Jay, that that, because he had this vaccine for, I think he had it in May of 2021. They're saying that they think that's why he died, because he made some statement when he got the vaccine. I'll pull it up in a second. I've already shown it before, where he said, if I die, then you know that I was wrong about getting the vaccine and it being safe, which I kind of think is that people are using that, and these papers are running with this sensationalism. It's kind of stupid in this sense, because he got it like over a year and a half ago. The stuff is probably not even working in his system, but we don't even have a cause of death. Now, if the cause of death is a clot, then that might, be something that I might, start saying, but what's your gut instinct tell you about this?
Yeah. Well, first off, may Doug rest in peace. Let me talk about like how I know him personally. So Doug literally used to train at World's Gym Pasadena in the mid 90s. It's now Gold's Gym. It became Gold's Gym, I think probably like 2004, 2003. But I mean, he was a very seminal bodybuilder, physique that I looked up to. And as you said, dude, that guy was the nicest guy. It didn't matter who you were. If you walked up to him and talked to him about strength training and the science and the art of all of it, he would talk to you for an hour. He wouldn't shut up. I mean, he was an amazing human being. So, I mean, I have the deepest respect for Doug, and anybody who never met Doug will say the same thing. Now, also, Dave, as you said already at the beginning of the show, the guy's a genius. I mean, he understood angles of pination and all these things about bodybuilding and building muscle way before. Like, I would say like Vince Gironda and then Doug Brignoli, if you talk to him, were the two guys that really understood the science. And also he was a taller guy. So he like was able to like really connect with people like me, who are 6'2", and teach us like the angles versus shorter guys and stuff like that. So all the great stuff about Doug is,
and that tells you how much he loved bodybuilding, because you know what? That minutia didn't really interest me as much as the supplementation. Like, you're like me, you like the supplements and the drugs and all that. So that's more enticing for us. But he actually would get into like studying how the muscles move.
Dude, his book is a genius book. I mean, anybody that has ever read his book, I would consider it like, Arnold's Encyclopedia, Fred Hatfield's book. I mean, he has so much science about like how to build muscle, like in the upper chest and the shoulder. I mean, he's a genius. Yeah. But to answer your question, so Alexander Juan Antonio Cortez and I, are pretty big on Twitter in the fitness world. And we wanted to do a seminar with Doug last year because we knew that, we wanted to help him financially. Obviously he's, again, one of those guys, like you said, a little too old to really take advantage of social media. Didn't have a following or an audience. His website's a joke. So we were like, you know what, this guy can teach younger people so much. And then, all the bullshit with what you said happened in the middle of the year with like the vaccine mandates and all of these things. And so we kind of backed off. But Alex had told me in his conversation with Doug that Doug was very, very clear and said, look, man, I'm a guy. I grew up in a world where if my doctor tells me to do it, I trust my doctor and I'm going to do it. And he very nonchalantly told Alex that in a conversation. And then Alex told me that.
Which is weird. Hold on, Jay. I don't mean to interrupt you, but it's weird because he's a bodybuilder and he knows the doctors the bodybuilders almost know more than doctors when it comes to nutrition.
Oh, they definitely do.
Yeah.
They definitely do. But as you know, dude, he's a little older than us. And, that generation in the 60s and up were really cultured on trusting their doctor. Right. And that's literally, and I podcast and talk about this all the time, but that really is a cultural difference than people like you and me who are like Gen X. And Gen X, for the most part, like we question everything, Like, we're not listening to anybody. We're going to go and do our research and stuff like that. But Doug was a very research dude. But again, when it came to the doctor, he's like, you know what? I trust the science. I trust my doctor. I'm going to do it. And that's all he spoke of it. He was done. I didn't even know he put that piece up on, Facebook, which obviously you saw and then I saw after the fact. But to answer the question, this is very multifactorial. First off, we have no clue, like you said. No clue. We don't have an autopsy report. If he did die from some sort of vascular incident, it's always up to the family and the people that, are the guardians of his, will or trust or his, everything that he has as possessions to whether or not they want to publish that. So I doubt that we will ever find out what the true cause of death was. And then the other thing is, and this, and again, I'm not labeling anybody, but the media right now doesn't want to put more, quote unquote, fear porn out into the world that the V is causing all of these, negative events, which we know it is because we have friends and we have family and we see social media. but they're not going to talk about it. It's, you know, obviously some people have run with it. What was it, Hollywood News or something did an article and posted a thing about, you know, what he said. Yep. But, you know, my take is from an understanding of, like you said, he's a bodybuilder. He's 63 years old. He's clearly on gear at his age again.
Yeah.
We both know that anything in super physiologic levels when you're in the 60s, you know, and older is risk to your vascular network. I have no idea if he was using AIs. I mean, most bodybuilders use AIs. I mean, I've been on your show, 3 times now to talk about AIs and how horrible they are for the vascular architecture. Yes, they're literally toxic chemicals. So, you know, if we say that he's in a soup bowl, right, and he is a guy who is literally using all of these polypharmacy at his age, you know, then the risk factors of suffering some sort of cardiac event is very high. I mean, that's the simplest way to put it, you know. So could it be an mRNA? Absolutely. Could that contribute to it? Yes, because we know that it causes myocarditis. We know that it causes blood clots and thickening of arterial walls. So that could be a contributing factor. But yes, you're right. It's a year and a half later. We also know from very smart researchers that a lot of the, you know, vaccine pools were made in gigantic supplies. And a lot of the mRNA, it turns out, is inert. You know, if you talk to any vaccine researcher, mRNA.
Really? I didn't even know that. Yeah.
Yeah, no, mRNA people will tell you that when you make giant, vast pools of this stuff to get to the public, and remember, it's not just the USA, it's the globe.
Right.
A lot of that stuff was inert. So whether or not Doug got an actual active mRNA vaccine that wasn't inert, the only way you would know is if you talk to him within 24 hours of receiving it. Because people that get the active one have delayed, you know, all sorts of stuff like delayed reaction. Some people actually feel what I would call complete inability to move. Like they become spastic. They almost have like epileptic seizure type events. And they're very short term. They only last for like 24 to 36 hours. So if in fact he would have those and somebody knew him personally and could come and tell us, then I could say, okay, then he actually got an active mRNA. But I know tons of people who have gotten 3 shots and a booster who had 0 side effects. And then I know people that I got.
Oh, so you think those were the inert ones is what you're saying?
100%. I mean, I literally in my mind, it has to be because look, man, I see older people that I know that are, you know, family people and they are in the worst health that you could imagine. Like these are people who have never exercised, never eaten right their whole life. And you're 3 shots and a booster and they're fine. Yeah. And then you get a healthy person and they tell you that like, dude, I couldn't get out of bed for 2 days. My brain was like in a vice. So that's my take.
Now, let's talk about that. Why do you think, and we're only speculating here, we're not doctors, obviously, but why do you think that this mRNA vaccine and combined with anabolics tends to be a deadly combination? Because, I mean, it seems like they're doing something that's making the thing worse.
Yeah. Well, so I have, you know, interesting theories, which you and I were going to talk about a year ago, which I haven't done. So it's a perfect segue to talk about it. So let's just like go back to, before we even talk about mRNA, let's just go back to John Meadows. Okay. Now I know he was a good friend of yours, a good friend of mine. Yeah. John used a high dose of an AI, most of his competitive career. Now he has confided in me personally that he was doing that. And some of us, you know, I won't mention other names because it's just me here, you know, had told him early, you know, when I say early, like in the last 7 or 8 years that like, bro, you need to stop using an AI. Okay. But he was literally of the opinion that like, hey, you know, I'm a little guy, you know, I've got this type of physique. And if I don't use an AI in this dosage, and you remember, John is a genius, right? I mean, he knew everything there was to know about training, mountain dog training, all that stuff.
What was his dosage he was using of the AI?
It was definitely 1 milligram. It was definitely 1 milligram. And I don't know if he was using it every day or every other day, but it was too much.
That's not excessive. That's kind of what everyone does, right?
Dude, totally too much. So at the end of the day, though, if you ask most bodybuilders, they're going to tell you, but if I don't use that dose, I have blank, you know, list the side effects. And for most guys, especially John.
And they have high estrogen on their blood.
Because he was short, it would be the water retention. Because those guys bloat so bad and then they can't breathe and they feel like shit. So, you know, the AI suppresses the water retention. So my take is that John, along with a lot of other guys, and I could just insert every one of these guys, and you know all of them, you were friends with all of them who have died. What we know from the science, and again, you know, I can refer to the doctors, I can refer to Dr. Scott Howell, who's like one of the world's leading epidemiologists, if not the guy on talking about bodybuilders. He was not a pro, but he got close to being a pro himself, and he knows the science and the sport. He will tell you that AIs cause vascular fissures. Okay. So in your network, your vascular networks, your capillaries and everything, you are literally, when you use an AI and you block estrogen, you are causing disruptions in the networks themselves. And these disruptions over time can cause any kind of vascular incident, a stroke, a heart attack. I mean, myocarditis. I mean, all of these different things, there's probably 10 other things that they can cause. It is my belief that all of these bodybuilders, literally every one of them, if you autopsied them and you looked at their vascular networks, you would literally find these little micro tears, these fissures in their networks. And that's what causes it. Now, it's not high dosage anabolics. Now, of course, the media tells everybody, oh, he was a mutant. He was 280 pounds and he was 5'10 or 5'11 and he died from polypharmacy. But if you actually, again, autopsy these bodybuilders, and you know this, Dave, nobody's going to do this. Nobody's going back to do this. No. Nobody's going back to look at Rich Piana. Okay, nobody's going back to look at any of these people, but it's my, again, argument, and I'm borrowing it from people like Scott and other physicians that I work with, on a day in, day out basis, that they're all dying from these micro fissures in their vascular networks. And what's the causal agent? It could be anything. They could be literally sitting on the toilet taking a shit.
So let's assume that you're right and these micro fissures are occurring. What is the virus and or the vaccine doing to these fissures? Is it making it worse?
Yes. So it means, so absolutely. So again, if it's a real mRNA and it's encoded in the cells and the vascular network, it's literally causing, there's all sorts of theories, but like nanites or nanoparticulate matter, again, from the mRNA, which by the way, is an engineered spike protein encoded virus that is in theory supposed to disable the COVID virus or whatever the COVID is. But it also leaves signatures.
It's supposed to stimulate your immune system to produce antibodies against the virus.
Exactly. But it's leaving signatures. And again, there are many scientists, many doctors who have looked at the blood of people who have been vaccinated, and they see these signatures. Again, they're like nanoparticulates. There's a million different names for it. But they are definitely causal agents to disrupt vascular flow and to occlude blood flow in the heart. And for somebody like a bodybuilder who's already exposing themselves to excessive blood volume, it can cause all sorts of disruption. So again, we're not saying that the mRNA killed Doug McNolly. We have no idea, but we're saying that theoretically and speculatively, there is a possibility that could have happened.
So what you're saying is that when you start stacking different, causative factors together, it's like the perfect storm. It's like, you can have a hurricane, like we had the hurricane down here in Fort Myers and Cape Coral, but the hurricane winds didn't destroy, all these houses. It was the water surge because the tide was coming in at the same time the storm was there and we got hit with the eye. And it was like all these different factors together caused this, 18 feet of water, to come in and just drown everything. And
that's a perfect argument, because you could even say that a lot of these bodybuilders, and let's face it, a lot of these guys were not competing anymore. A lot of these guys were like either off season or, former. Dude, their life that, they were eating an inflammatory diet. Let's say they weren't exercising like they did when they were competing. Any of those things, which again causes an inflammatory cascade of cytokines, a cytokine storm, call it the storm surge, the cytokine storm, that could have literally been the initiator to the causal agent of some sort of vascular incident, because they have fissures all through their body from using AI.
Yeah, let's say there's like let's say fissures alone from AIs are not going to kill you, but then you got fissures and you got elevated red blood cell count and blood thickness, and then you either had COVID maybe, or you had the mRNA, and so you have it takes like a certain threshold to possibly have a problem, because you could look at someone like George Peterson, who died in the hotel room right before the Olympia. And I don't think he even got, I'm not even sure if he got a vaccine or not. But he's dehydrated, he's going to make weight, he's in the best shape of his life, but he has all these causative factors. Plus now you take away, fluid from him. And once again, perfect storm. The hurricane came at the same time, everything surged up at the same time. And that's a deadly cocktail all of a sudden that you have. And so
100% agreement. I think you could make an argument, and we will be able to play this out, especially in the next 2 to 3 years, as we start seeing, the death toll rise. And the other thing too is, and this, we all know this, everybody watching this, you can admit this or not, the media, whoever they are, is going out of their way to suppress the actual increase in non-causal deaths in the world, which is, again, SADS, right? Sudden adult death syndrome, which is everybody would on the internet is labeling it. But there's a lot of people who are otherwise healthy who are now dying. And this is statistically proven in all of the actuary for people that do life insurance. I mean, there's just like a giant increase in death. And it's not caused, there's no causal agent. So, I mean, like the logical assumption is that a lot of these people were vaxxed. Simple as that.
Or, just having gotten the virus,
that too.
You're exposed to the same causative effect. I mean, you don't have to actually have the actual vaccine. You could actually, pretty much is, I think everyone has gotten COVID.
And the last 2 years too, bro, you could also throw in the stress. Of all of the nonsense of people being, isolated, stuck in their house, eating too much food, not exercising, being in fear. You're right. It's like a perfect storm, the storm surge.
What can people do to combat this?
Well, I mean, look, I literally want to say this, and I know you've had dealings with these guys, but somebody just sent me a video this morning of Tony Huge and Leo Longevity doing a video on recommending AIs for natty guys on like increasing testosterone. I mean, like, and again, Dave, I love you, man. I totally appreciate having the opportunity to come on your show and to help people, because you and I are helping a lot of people. Absolutely. I literally in my life, since the first time I was on your show, have received more than 1,000 emails from people that say you saved my life.
That's great.
And like, you literally got me off the AI, and this was my blood work then, and this is my blood work now. And a lot of these guys still talk to me, but the bottom line is, and this, and everyone in the bodybuilding community has to understand this, using an AI is absolutely 100% unequivocally shortening your lifespan. There is no denial. You cannot suppress estrogen without downstream secondary negative effects. Estrogen is what confers protection to all of your biological systems.
Let me ask you a question. Hold on, let me stop you for a second. Let's say you have excessive estrogen and you're using an AI to keep it in a normal range. Are you still at risk?
Still horrible, because excessive estrogen is really not a factor. Yes, high estrogen levels are observed, but estrogen will always fall to the level that your genetics equate, right? So if you're taking 2 grams of testosterone, again, we're not talking therapeutic, we're talking polypharmacy, pro bodybuilder type, and your estrogen is extremely high because, again, you're aromatizing all of that testosterone, then taking an AI to suppress that estrogen is only alleviating the side effects. It's not alleviating the actual negative effects that is caused by blocking your estrogen. Remember, blocking your estrogen stops bone mineral density.
But you're not blocking it all, is what I'm saying. In other words,
you're not blocking. Of course, you're not blocking all of it, but just blocking it with that drug. And again, remember, this drug is literally a cancer prevention agent.
It's a cancer prevention agent in that estrogen is what stimulates the breast cancer tumors to grow. So it's not,
that's
not a chemotherapeutic agent.
That's what they think. That's why the drug was created. But that really, if you look at all the research and the meta-analysis on that, that's not even really ultimately true. But the bottom line is, when we take testosterone, we want as high a level as estrogen as we can have, because the higher the estrogen, the more you're protected. The more your brain's protected, the more your heart's protected, the more your bones are protected. Now, what most guys think, and this is important to differentiate, because I don't know if I've done this yet, is that high estrogen is what causes side effects. It's not high estrogen. It's high inflammation, which is usually from anything, right? A shitty diet, too much belly fat. Think of how many bodybuilders have belly fat. And the belly fat is causing that cytokine storm. And a lot of these guys are injecting right down in that area, right, to get all this fucking gear in them. And that's causing an inflammatory response. And again, that to them is high estrogen symptoms. And again, this, how many doctors out there are still saying this to people? There isn't even anything called high estrogen symptoms. There's high inflammation, high visceral body fat. Okay. And those are the side effects that you're experiencing. High estrogen is literally giving you protection. Now, you're right. If you're using 2 or 3 grams of test, that high estrogen is causing, quote unquote, water retention, bloat, mood instability. But that's really just a combination of the polypharmacy. And again, you're at such high doses, you're going to have side effects. I mean, the central nervous system at 1 gram of testosterone is 24/7. You're awake 24/7.
Sure.
right?
So are you saying people should maybe lower their testosterone usage?
Well, so the way I would say this, and again, you know, I'm not coaching pro bodybuilders. I have in the past, but you know, the bottom line is, and you know this better than anybody because you were the guy that used to teach this. If you know how to fucking train, you don't need all of that gear. It's absolutely, positively a waste of money. Yes, you need insulin. Yes, you need growth hormone. But if you don't have the genetics and you don't have the actual training capacity, and you don't learn how to train from somebody like Dave, and there's a lot of other guys I can name, then you don't need that level of gear. Now, again, I know a lot of these guys are going to watch this and they're going to be like, who's that guy? He's fucking 210 pounds. He doesn't know shit about bodybuilding or training or any of that stuff. But at the end of the day, dude, like, I just know that taking a high dose of an AI to block what you believe is high estrogen symptoms from your polypharmacy, your massive dosages, is literally killing you. And I would argue that the majority of those guys, again, died from that high dose AI over time. And again, I don't want to mention names, but I'm pretty confident that there's at least 50 to 60% of all those guys have died in the last 5 years or from that.
Yeah, but they're not dying from that. It's a combination of problems,
of course,
with other things. So like we talked about. So I don't think you can really say this is killing people, because you would see a lot more deaths from it because a lot of people take AIs, you know.
I mean, I think that, but I think there are a lot of people that are dying from heart-related incidents that are not created or not the causal agent is not because they were using an AI, but you could make an argument again, if you autopsy these guys, that a lot of that stuff was due to that. But you're right. Everything in combination is causing it.
Yeah,
definitely.
And I think you got to take a holistic look at it. You can't just take one variable and say this is the causing effect. But we have a lot of variables now in the pot of soup, so to speak.
Totally.
You know, between COVID, we have people who are, like you said, are not eating right now because they're depressed, overweight. You have people on gear. You know, we don't even know if the gear is real. You know, people are making their own stuff. You know, that's another whole factor that we, how pure is it? You know, are there impurities in there? No one knows what they're putting into their bodies, you know.
Well, let's summarize it like this, because I know you have a ton of guys that are not pro bodybuilders that watch this show. So if you're using testosterone therapeutically, which I hope you are, right? Because it is now, right, the great separator, because we could talk about, how contaminated the environment is now.
How much do you take a week now?
150 to 175 milligrams. Okay. And I don't even use injectable anymore. I use the transcrotal, which is a 200 milligram per milliliter, cream. It's a topical applicator. Yeah. You click it 2 or 3 times, and it depends on you. It depends on the individual. But like for me, I just use it in the morning. But if you're using therapeutic testosterone, there is no place for a fucking AI at all. None. You are literally zero. You don't need it. But it's like I said, when you lower your estrogen, let's talk about side effects of low estrogen. When you push your estrogen below 10, which is a lot of these physicians have their patients because, again, they're managing them by the state medical licensing boards. These guys, dude, have no brain power. They feel anxious. They have no sex drive. It destroys sexual function.
I tell people not to take an AI when they're on HRT.
Dude, it's insane how many guys still are, though, because doctors just routinely part of it.
That's part of the protocol that these clinics are putting forth. But you don't have to take it. You can skip it.
Dude, there's guys out there now compounding AI with HCG together. I mean,
no way. I haven't seen that. That's crazy.
I've seen it all. But anyway, bottom line, if you're watching the show and you're on therapeutic testosterone, and I hope you are, please stop using an AI. You don't need it.
The clinics that I've seen, they're really not giving a lot of AI, but what you're saying, it makes sense. Look, if you're going to tell a person to take 1 milligram a week, first of all, it's not even in your system half the week if you only take it 1 day a week. So it's kind of like they know you don't really need it, but because the board of whatever longevity medicine says this is the protocol, they prescribe it. I think that's what it is.
I mean, dude, it's so crazy. Again, at the end of the day, guys, estrogen is what confers protection, not testosterone. Testosterone makes you have sex drive. It makes you have dopamine signaling and enhances your cognition. But it's the estrogen level that allows you to be strong and virile and have good bone mineral density and recover. And again, have brain power. I mean, and again, in vascular, you got to have a clean vascular network. I mean, blocking estrogen just tears up the vascular network. It's that simple.
Yeah, well, look, it definitely makes sense, and it would definitely help explain why we're seeing, sudden deaths in athletes.
Oh, totally.
At an elite level, because we know these guys are taking, and girls are taking, performance enhancing stuff. Whether they're getting caught or not is another story. And they're taking estrogen blocking agents, and that's all part of the whole, we don't talk about it protocol, but we're seeing it in all sports. And I have to believe it's the perfect storm, like you said, of, vascular damage, either getting the virus or the vax. And then on top of that, using, drugs that make you produce a lot of red blood cells. And in some sports, they just use EPO directly, which red blood cells. So
like you said, it's a giant storm surge, and the storm surge, if you're not healthy, and that's the other thing, dude, like, we were talking off air about Doug at 63. I mean, why would you ever put your body into that kind of duress by using, again, polypharmacy? And I don't care what he was using. I mean, he was a smart guy. I'm sure he was probably just using 200 of this, 300 of that, 200 of that, whatever, but it's still enhancing your body's risk at that age. It's that simple. I
think he wanted to get up on stage and he was going to guest pose one more time. And he wanted to prove that at his age, he can get back in the best shape of his life. And, it's one of those people go through. I mean, luckily, it hasn't happened to me. I'm done. When I quit, when I'm done with something, I'm done with it. But
I'm just like you guys
want to see, hey, I got one more in me, one more time. And you convince yourself, I'm not really pushing the envelope too much. But you know what? When you get older, your body is just not as resilient as it is when it's 20 years old.
No, 100%, bro. I mean, exactly. I mean, but guys like us, we're very common sense oriented. And it's like we get to a certain level. Like, I was a pro athlete. I played basketball until I was 34 in men's adult leagues. And I was still good. I was still dunking on people. And I'm like, when I couldn't jump without a horrible, excruciating pain in my back, I put my shoes away.
Right.
Guys are asking me to play in adult men's leagues because they think I'm a ringer. I'm like, dude, never. That's over.
If I can't do it at a high level, I don't want to do it at all. Exactly. I don't want to be one of those guys. Oh, he's great for his age.
Yeah, exactly, dude. 100% same.
If someone tells me, hey, your hair looks like it's growing, that to me is the greatest compliment.
Totally.
I don't care. Really? My arms look good. You got veins in your arm. I'm like, I don't care. Just tell me my hair looks good for the day.
Let's, if we can, we still have time. Let's talk about fertility and HRT, because that's a big deal right now. Yeah. A lot of people cannot get pregnant. I mean, dude, I have so many people wanting to consult.
I'm going to tell you something, but until I'm going to let you go do your spiel. The pregnancy protocol that I give out to people
is amazing. Yeah,
it works.
Yeah, no, 100%.
I got people naming kids after me because
I want you to bring it up. I want you to bring it up because I'm literally going to that. I'm literally okay. So let's just talk about the newest shit. So all these guys out there are talking about kisspeptin, which is a peptide, and gonorrhea, which is also a peptide. Yeah. And in the research, right, it shows that they're as strong as quote unquote HCG or HMG, but in theory. Here's the thing. And again, I've talked to many doctors and many patients, many people who have done this. The only way either of those two agents can even remotely get as close to equaling HCG or HMG is you got to administer 5 times a day just to get blood levels and FSH and LH
it's like levels. Saying sermorelin is the same as growth hormone. Come on.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, but at the end of the day, dude, I'm telling you, this is like so big out there in the clinical space right now, and it's an absolute joke. I have so many guys, I have so many guys.
It's cheap. That's why,
dude, I have so many guys messaging me about this, and I'm like, man, I want to go on Dave's show and tell him about this. But we can segue right now to you. I also have a protocol. Nothing is better than HCG and HMG together. HCG will get you pregnant too, but I will just say this. When you and I had our kids, bro, the environment was not as contaminated as it is now.
No.
This environment is full of contaminated bullshit. So it's going to be harder for you as a man. And I don't give a shit if you're in your 20s, 30s, or 40s to have kids than it was when me and Dave had our kids. It's just, that's how much more contaminated the environment is.
I didn't have any kids till recently. So I'm
but not. I mean, but I'm just saying, go, segue to your protocol.
We'll talk about later. Yeah. You know what the problem is? We'll address it to bodybuilders, but I know regular people who also are not fertile. But bodybuilders suppress their production of sperm and testosterone in their testicles, so that it's an obvious, it's usually the male's fault. Okay, why they can't get pregnant. It's usually not the woman. The woman's getting her period, then she's probably fertile. So the problem is there's 2 sets of cells in the testicles: the Leydig cells that produce testosterone, and then the Sertoli cells that produce sperm. The Leydig cells bathe those Sertoli cells and then indirectly make them produce sperm cells. The problem is sometimes, HCG stimulating those Leydig cells doesn't produce enough testosterone locally, and you don't get enough sperm. So HMG, human menopausal gonadotropin, also now is being sold synthetically as synthetic FSH, or follicle stimulating hormone. That directly stimulates those Sertoli cells to make sperm. So that's the most potent stimulator of getting this stuff working, so to speak, and getting the numbers up. The problem is you can have enough sperm cells, but if they're not swimming, then they can't do their job of getting to the egg and fertilizing it. So what I found was that, and I found this indirectly by my own experience, that taking injectable glutathione increases sperm motility insanely. You could take 200 milligrams a day, and that's what I was doing. So for my third kid, I didn't use any fertility because I wasn't planning on having a third kid. The only thing I was taking, I wasn't even on HCG. The only thing I was taking was my glutathione shot every day. And then when my wife got pregnant, in 2 seconds, I went and did some research, and I realized that they increased sperm. So I had sperm cells because I had been on my fertility protocol for for 4 years with my other 2 kids. I never went back on testosterone, but my numbers weren't great, but I got the motility up. And so HMG or synthetic FSH, like I know I deal with Titan Medical Center. And they sell synthetic FSH, but you can get HMG. They do the same thing. 75 IUs of it every other day. And I don't even, I use it with HCG. I usually recommend 1,000 to 2,000 units every other day too, but you probably don't even need it. I think if you use the HMG, I really think that it's that potent, but the glutathione definitely is important because a lot of guys have sperm numbers. They don't have the swimming ability, the motility. And then morphology is how well formed the sperm is important too. And if you take a really high quality multivitamin, that will give the sperm really good morphology. I usually recommend people take my B Mineralized because I know that it has everything in there that you need. But those 3 aspects will do it. Kisspeptin is being pushed now, Jay, because a lot of labs stopped making the generic, stopped compounding HCG because, I don't know, there was some kind of lawsuit or something like that. So I think they overturned that now, but HCG is a much more potent stimulator of testosterone than kisspeptin is, because kisspeptin's up the line. So kisspeptin is like the hypothalamic hormone, gonadotropic releasing hormone. So kisspeptin will do the same thing. It will stimulate the pituitary to release FSH and LH, but it's not a very potent stimulator of that.
Genius. I have nothing to add to that. I mean, I was the same. My protocol is HMG, HCG, and I actually say I'm in total agreement with you. You don't even need any HCG, but I like doing like 250. It's
good for sex drive. You know why? Because Clomid, and I forgot to mention, I usually use Clomid or Nolvadex just to block those estrogen receptors in the hypothalamus to keep FSH and LH working better. But Clomid sometimes can kill your sex drive a little bit.
I hate Clomid.
I hate it too. But
I mean, a lot of people are sensitive to Clomid. When I would use clomiphene, again, I used a very surgically precise dose. I was taking like a half a 25 milligram pill. It would literally make me emotional. Like I felt emotional.
It's a synthetic estrogen. That's what
I mean, it's again, all of these things are women's fertility drugs. They're women's urine, right? Like they take the metabolites out of women's urine to make these drugs. But dude, that's so well said.
Clomid theoretically does the same thing as Nolvadex. It theoretically just blocks estrogen receptors. Why they develop 2 different drugs to do the same thing, clomiphene and tamoxifen, but I don't know. So I use clomiphene just because by convention, that's usually the best fertility drug.
You can get it it's easiest to get, by the way, too.
Yes. I tell people 50 milligrams max per day because usually 100 will kill your sex drive a little bit.
Yeah, and make you super, super emotional. Do we have time to talk a little bit about gyno? Because I see that coming out now again, too, and everybody is like so utterly confused about gynecomastia.
We got a few minutes.
2 minutes. And it's as simple as this. If you get gynecomastia and you actually get the expression of the glandular tissue and it stays, you have a genetic predisposition to gyno.
Yes, 100%.
Taking raloxifene or fucking Nolvadex, or God knows the crazy people that talk about using suicide inhibitors like letrozole and these things, you are literally, that's not doing shit. Maybe it suppresses the actual presentation, but it's still going to come back. The answer,
it's still there. No, you know what? It's still there. It's just not as swelled up. It's still there.
That's exactly right. You got to get it cut out, bro. There are
Cut it right out. Full Dr. Blau. Yeah.
There's so many doctors that are literally telling people that you can take this and this. And then let's also, you know, not to be nice to doctors, how many of them don't even know how to do the surgery? Okay. And look, I have a genetic predisposition. I had it cut out of this nipple. And now 7 years later, I have a tiny little rock right here. And I know at some point I'm going to have to get it cut out too. But the bottom line is, dude, most docs don't even know how to cut it out. They cut it out like a lipo surgeon.
No, you got to go to you got to go to experience. Dr. Blau in New York is the best.
They go into the glandular ducting and they literally pull out all of the glandular tissue so it never comes back.
Right.
And I know you know doctors and I know doctors, but please, guys, stop listening to docs who are giving you AIs and fucking SERMs and all this stupid shit. It's not doing shit except suppressing your estrogen and, like you said, blocking the expression.
Once I got it taken out, I never took an estrogen blocker again. I'm not really a big aromatizer, but I just had glands there. Probably if I was a girl, I would have had big boobs.
62% of men, this is from Dr. Anthony J., who does all of the genetic testing, 62% of men have the gyno gene.
Yes.
So that's the majority of bodybuilders are going to get gyno at some point, whatever you use, but you cannot block it or suppress it. You got to have it surgically excised.
Right. And the good thing is now, because, you know, my family, my mother's side, everyone had cancer. So breast cancer, that BRCA gene, and everyone, I'm like, it doesn't even matter. I don't have any tissue in there. Exactly. So I'll never get that because there's nothing there to grow. So it is a benefit for men to get it removed for sure.
Dude, we dispelled so much bullshit on the show. It's amazing. We didn't even do it.
The bullshit meter has been going boom, 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 boom. My phone is ringing like crazy. The bullshit meter. Jay, thank you so much for joining us. I love doing these conversations. We got to get you back more, talk about some more controversial topics in our sport. And keep doing what you're doing. You're doing great stuff.
I love you, brother. Hey, if any of you guys are watching the show and you don't have a copy of any of my books, I give them away free now. Just go to jcampbell.com/free books and just grab them and they're yours.
There you go. Hey, who's giving you free stuff nowadays? No one. Check it out at his website, please. I'm Dave Palumbo with Jay Campbell for another edition of Guru Talk. We'll see you next time.